A man walked into a gas station just to grab a cup of coffee. 3 minutes later, he was on his knees, a gun pointed at his head, while dozens of strangers stood by, filming everything. What the local officer didn't know, that man was the deputy director of the United States Secret Service. And from that moment, a quiet corner of Spartanburg became the center of a national conversation. It was a Tuesday morning, not early enough for the world to feel still, but just late enough for everything to feel rushed and distracted. Cars were already clogging up Highway 29, radios buzzing, horns blaring, people clutching coffee cups like shields against meetings they didn't want to attend. At a chevron on the edge of town, a sleek black SUV rolled to a smooth stop, quiet, unmarked, like it had nothing to prove. Michael Lawson stepped out. He was tall, composed, skin like burnished bronze, and moved with the kind of posture that made people clear a path without being asked. Charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, no tie, a discreet earpiece in his right ear, a flash of silver at his hip, barely visible unless you were really looking. Michael was no ordinary man. He was the deputy director of the U.S. Secret Service. But this morning he wasn't on assignment. No dignitary, no summit, no security sweep, just a man getting his morning coffee, black, no sugar, no cream. Before walking in, he glanced briefly at a photo tucked into his wallet. His niece, Bria. She'd messaged him yesterday asking when he'd come visit again. Inside, the soft ding of the store's doorbell gave way to the hiss of the coffee machine. A country song played low in the background. Don't judge a man by what you see. He poured his coffee, paid in cash, walked back out. The lid was still warm when the moment cracked open. A patrol car screeched into the lot. Officer Rick Danvers stepped out fast, one hand already resting on his holster, eyes locked in. You with that SUV? Yes, sir. Name? I'm on official duty. I can show you my credentials. I asked for your name. 30 seconds later, Michael was on his knees in the parking lot, fingers laced behind his head, a gun aimed at his back. Phones went up. Cameras rolled. Nobody shouted. Nobody moved. But everyone knew. They were witnessing something that had happened too many times and should have never happened again. Michael didn't flinch, even as the officer's voice grew louder, even as the hand on the gun tightened, even as the early morning stillness cracked under the weight of suspicion. The officer's boots crunched across the gravel as he closed in, barking again, this time more aggressive. Registration, now keys, name. What's your business with that vehicle? Michael kept his voice level, calm. Sir, I'm on federal duty. My credentials are in my jacket. If you'll allow— Don't move, Danvers snapped, cutting him off. I've seen plenty of fake badges. You look real confident in that suit. That your cousin's car? You borrow it? You lift it off somebody? Michael blinked. Once. The way trained men do when they need to say 100 things without letting a single one slip out. My credentials are on my left side, inside pocket. If you'd like to verify, hands where I can see them. Danvers took a step back, drew his weapon. Gasps broke through the parking lot. A woman near pump 3 covered her mouth. Someone near the ice machine pulled out their phone. Another whispered, "What the hell is happening?" Michael didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't even look away. He crouched down slowly, placed his coffee on the pavement like it was made of glass, and lowered himself to his knees. Then, with the grace of someone who's had a weapon pointed at him before, someone who's trained others on how not to get killed, he laced his fingers behind his head. I am not a threat, he said, low and clear. My badge is on my person. I am not resisting. Danvers laughed. Not the kind of laugh that means something is funny, the kind that means a man feels powerful in the wrong way. He stepped to the side, circling, trying to get behind Michael. Bet you got backup in that SUV, huh? That why you're so calm? You streaming this to your buddies? Michael didn't answer. Silence in this moment was safer than truth. And then, Danvers made a decision that would define everything. He reached past Michael, yanked open the door to the SUV, and paused. There were no weapons, no drugs, no suspect hiding in the back seat, just a secure laptop docked to the console, a government-issued ID clipped to the glove box, and a small locked case bolted beneath the seat, just visible under the light. He hesitated, but only for a second. And that's when Michael spoke again, this time louder, for everyone to hear. "You just opened a federal vehicle without probable cause." The words landed like a dropped hammer. Danvers narrowed his eyes. "Yeah? And you just impersonated a federal agent." But before he could continue, the sound of a second vehicle rolling in silenced everything. Another black SUV. Quiet engine. Tinted windows. Purpose in its parking. The crowd looked over. A door opened, and Agent Kendra Moss stepped out. Tall, sharp-eyed, dressed in all black with her badge clipped clearly at her chest. She moved fast but steady, like someone who'd done this before. "Dry, status?" she asked, her voice calm but cold. Michael didn't move. "Non-compliant local officer, drawn weapon, unauthorized search of a secure federal vehicle. I've not resisted." Kendra turned to Danvers. "You want to explain what the hell you're doing?" Danvers blinked. Just once. The weight of the moment hit him, but not all the way. He said he was Secret Service. I wasn't about to take that at face value. Kendra didn't blink. "You pulled a weapon on a federal officer," she said razor sharp. "That's not doubt. That's a felony." Danvers looked like he might argue, but she cut him off. "Don't finish that sentence. You've already said too much." For a moment, no one breathed. The only sounds were the whir of the nearby air compressor and the subtle hum of the second SUV's engine still idling by the curb. Kendra Moss stood with her shoulders squared, gaze locked on Officer Danvers, who still hadn't lowered his weapon. His grip trembled now, barely, but enough to notice. "I already told you," he muttered. "He claimed to be Secret Service. What was I supposed to do? Just let it go?" Kendra took a step forward. Not rushed, not loud, just certain. "What you were supposed to do was verify his credentials, not pull a gun, not order a man to the ground before asking a single damn question, and you especially weren't supposed to open a secured federal vehicle without a warrant or cause." Michael remained still, kneeling, hands still behind his head. His calm was unnerving, like the eye of a storm that hadn't passed yet. That's when it came. The third SUV. This one didn't pull in smooth. It came fast, sharp turn, brakes hissing, black as night, no markings, no hesitation. Two men stepped out the moment the tires stopped rolling. Both wore suits, no sunglasses, no wasted movement. The one in front had silver streaks at his temples and a voice like quiet thunder. "Deputy Director Lawson," he said, approaching. "Are you injured?" Michael spoke without moving. "No, sir, compliant and unharmed. Cameras are rolling. Civilian witnesses present. Suspect failed to verify credentials before drawing a weapon. SUV entry unauthorized." "Confirmed," Kendra added, without taking her eyes off Danvers. The silver-templed man turned toward the officer. "Name and badge number." Danvers hesitated, then finally, voice tight, "Rick Danvers, Spartanburg County." "Officer Danvers, my name is Supervisory Special Agent Lyle Mercer, United States Secret Service." He flipped open his credentials slowly, holding them so the entire crowd could see. "You're now under administrative detention pending full federal investigation." The air changed. Again. Gas pumps beeped, someone coughed, and a kid behind the snack machine whispered, "Yo, they're taking him in." "You can't be serious," Danvers said, taking a step back. His voice was suddenly small. "I was doing my job. I thought he was lying." "No, officer," Mercer said quietly. "You weren't doing your job. You were feeding your bias, and you're very lucky this didn't end in gunfire." Danvers' mouth opened, then closed. His face was pale, hands twitching at his belt. Then his fingers drifted, just for a split second, toward his holster. Both agents behind Mercer took a synchronized half-step forward. No weapons drawn, but they didn't have to. The energy changed. Cold, focused. Kendra's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Don't make this worse for yourself." Danvers froze. Then slowly, he reached down, unfastened the holster, and pulled out his firearm. Grip first, offering it to Mercer. Mercer didn't take it. One of his men did. Silently. Efficiently. "Hands where we can see them," Mercer ordered. Danvers obeyed. Jaw clenched. Shoulders back. trying to pretend like he still had control. But everyone saw the truth now. The crowd had grown. People stood behind fuel pumps, leaning out of cars, phones raised high. A woman whispered to her son, "You see that? That's what justice looks like when it actually shows up." A man shouted from across the lot, "Y'all better take his badge. He had that gun on him the whole time." Another voice, young, female, cut through. "He told him he was federal." He laughed at the badge. Danvers looked around, and for the first time truly saw the wall of eyes, of witnesses. He looked less like a man with a badge and more like a boy who'd just been told he wasn't in charge anymore. Mercer leaned in one last time. "You're being placed under internal review. No badge, no gun, no access. You'll sit in that vehicle," he pointed, "and wait." Danvers said nothing. No argument left. Just a nod, barely. And then he turned, walking stiffly toward the back seat of an unmarked sedan. As the door closed behind him, the silence was deafening. Kendra turned toward Michael finally. "You good?" He nodded once, still on his knees, still not shaken. "Better now." Michael sat in the back of a government SUV, door half open, elbows resting on his knees. Outside, the gas station lot had started to clear. The chaos had ended, but something heavier remained, a silence filled with consequences. Agent Mercer stood nearby, murmuring into a secure line. Kendra Moss leaned against the front fender, eyes scanning the parking lot like a bodyguard still on alert. Inside the vehicle, Michael's coffee, cold now, sat in the cup holder. He didn't touch it. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shaking. He was still. Across the lot, voices buzzed like distant thunder. A man in overalls whispered into his phone, "Nah, man, I saw it all." They cuffed the cop, and the Fed didn't even blink. A teenager paced back and forth, live streaming to his followers. "Y'all, this just went wild. Dude was Secret Service. And that cop, nah, he's done." Someone else shouted toward the car, "We saw you, man. We got you." Phones were still up, comments pouring in. By the time the third SUV pulled away with Officer Danvers in the back seat, the first video had already hit 12,000 shares. Michael glanced down at his phone. Silent. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of notifications. But he didn't open a single one. He didn't need to. He knew what the footage showed. A man who said exactly who he was and wasn't believed. And he also knew what the world would do with it. Inside the temporary DHS field post, set up 2 hours later inside a nearby government office, Michael sat across from a young woman in glasses and a DHS lapel pin. "Sir, media requests are flooding in," she said gently. "CNN, The Hill, even Good Morning America. They're all asking for comment. Some are asking for an interview tonight." Michael didn't look up. "Not yet." "Your name's trending, sir. Someone from your hometown posted your old high school photo. There's an article going up on the Washington Post in less than an hour." Still, he didn't blink. He was listening, but not reacting, not yet. "They're calling you a hero," she said finally. "Some are calling you the face of reform." Michael exhaled through his nose, the kind of breath that comes after holding back more than just words. "I didn't survive that encounter to become a hashtag. Sir, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't escalate. But that doesn't mean I want to be your symbol. This wasn't performance. This was survival." She nodded, quietly typed a note. Across the room, Mercer walked in with a folder. "Preliminary on Danvers, multiple complaints, 2 use of force reports in 5 years, all brushed under the rug." Michael gave the smallest nod. "That's why it matters this time." Mercer sat down beside him. "You want us to draft a statement?" "No." "You want to go on record?" "Not yet." "Why?" Michael turned his head, finally looking him in the eye. "Because if I speak now, they'll hear my anger, not my clarity, and I need them to understand the difference." That night, Michael stayed in a secure hotel under federal order, standard protocol after a public incident involving federal agents. But there were no armed guards, no threats, just silence. He sat on the edge of the bed, reading a single text message from his niece. "Uncle M, everyone's talking about you. You okay?" He replied, "I'm okay. I'm always okay. Keep being curious. Keep asking hard questions. Love you." She sent back a photo, a drawing of him standing tall, next to a smiling police officer, both beneath the words, "Be better than what they expect." He stared at the screen for a long time, not because he needed comfort, but because it reminded him why he'd stayed calm, why he hadn't shouted, why he hadn't fought back. Because sometimes the loudest thing a man can do is stay still. By morning, the story was everywhere. Cable news ran side-by-side footage, one side showing Danvers with his gun out, the other showing Michael kneeling, not moving, not blinking. A guest on MSNBC called it the clearest case of trained restraint in the face of systemic bias. Social media erupted in commentary. Politicians issued statements. Advocacy groups called for reform. Civil rights attorneys weighed in. But Michael, he said nothing. Not yet, because he wasn't chasing headlines. He wasn't chasing justice through hashtags. He was preparing to speak one time, in his own words, with no spin and no rage, just the truth. And that truth was coming. There were no flags behind him, no podium with a government seal, no cameras from major news networks, just a simple wooden microphone stand in the center of a community hall on the east side of Spartanburg. Folding chairs, dim lighting, and about 200 people sitting shoulder to shoulder, neighbors, teachers, students, parents, many of whom had never heard of Michael Lawson before last week. Now, they sat in complete silence, waiting to hear what he had to say. Michael wasn't in a suit today, no earpiece, no badge in sight, just slacks, a black sweater, sleeves rolled, posture steady, voice low but unmistakably present. He looked out at the room, not to perform, not to convince, but to connect. "My name is Michael Lawson," he began, "and for the last 16 years I've served as a federal agent. Most of that time I've worked in rooms you'll never see, guarding people whose names you know, but whose lives you never touch. That's the job. You stay quiet, you stay sharp, you blend in. You don't make the story about you." A pause. "But last Tuesday, the story found me anyway." No one moved. Phones recorded quietly, eyes locked in. "I wasn't mistaken for a criminal. I wasn't confused for a suspect. I was judged immediately, instinctively, not by what I said or did, but by how I looked and where I was standing." He let that sentence settle. The officer didn't know who I was. And that's the point. I could have been anyone. Your brother, your husband, your son, just another man on his knees in a parking lot with a gun pointed at him for buying coffee. Michael looked down briefly, then back up. "I don't hate him. I want to say that clearly. I don't carry anger in my chest like some kind of weapon waiting to go off. I carry disappointment, deep disappointment, that a man trained to serve could look at another man and decide in a second that he didn't belong. Not because of anything I did, but because of who he decided I was." A low hum of emotion stirred in the room. A few heads lowered. A woman in the second row wiped her eye. "People keep calling me a hero," he said, "but I didn't do anything heroic. I stood still. I stayed calm. I did what I've taught younger agents for years. Don't move too fast. Don't give them a reason. Let the facts catch up to the fear." He took a breath, slow and full. "But here's what scares me most. If I had raised my voice, if I had reached for my ID just a second too soon, I might not be standing here." The room shifted. Not a gasp, just weight, heavy, collective understanding. "Last night, my niece asked me, 'Uncle M, why do people treat us like that if we didn't do anything wrong?' I couldn't give her a simple answer, because there isn't one." He looked around the room, slowly, carefully. "But I told her this. When someone lowers the standard, you raise yours. When someone loses their temper, you keep your ground. You show the world who you are, even when they try to write your story for you." Soft applause broke out. Not loud, just enough to let him know. "We hear you." He nodded, almost shyly. "I didn't come here today to be a symbol. I came to be accountable. To the people who watched, to the ones who recorded, to the ones who didn't look away. I don't want to lead a movement, but I do believe in one. And it starts with how we see each other. Before the badge, before the suit, Before the assumptions, another pause, final, grounded. I was trained to protect people who will never know my name. And last week, I protected myself. Not with force, not with fear, but with patience and clarity. And something I think we're all going to need a lot more of moving forward: dignity. And with that, he stepped back from the microphone. The room didn't erupt. It rose, one by one, in silence. People stood, not for the drama, not for the man, but for what he had just reminded them they still had: their voice, their choice, their decency. The hall emptied slowly. People lingered. Some shook his hand. Some just nodded. No words, only that look. The one that says, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Michael stayed behind a few minutes longer, helping fold chairs, wiping down the mic stand with a napkin. No ceremony, no spotlight. Outside, the air had shifted. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the pavement. A quiet evening, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but stays with you. He walked alone to his rental car. No escort, no agents, just his own footsteps on cracked concrete. As he opened the door, a voice behind him called softly, "Mr. Lawson?" He turned. A woman, mid-60s, silver hair in a low bun, cardigan wrapped tight across her chest like she was holding herself together. Her name tag read, Marilyn. "I just wanted to say, you reminded me of my son," she said. "He passed away 10 years ago. He used to say, 'Don't give people a reason to define you. Define yourself first.'" He didn't always get the chance. Michael looked at her, really looked, then stepped forward, placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "He still spoke truth," he said. "And today, you just gave him a voice again." She smiled through her tears, just a little, then turned and walked away. Michael stood there for a moment longer, not to reflect, not to replay, just to be still. Later that night, he sat alone on the small balcony of a hotel outside town. The TV inside was off. His phone, silent, screen face down. A notepad rested on his lap. Blank. He didn't write anything. He didn't need to, because the message had already been delivered. Not by trending hashtags, not by angry headlines, but by the way the room had listened. The way strangers had stood up, not for applause, but out of respect, out of recognition. He thought about what comes next, the interviews he would decline, the meetings that would be requested, the policy changes that might or might not come. But more than anything, he thought about people, the ones who had watched, the ones who had shared the story, and the ones who would never make it to the headlines, but who lived the same kind of quiet restraint every day, without cameras, without backup, without justice. And that's when the lesson settled in. Not for them, but for him. You don't always choose the moment, but you always choose the man you are in it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay human.